A weird time.
So waiting is probably not a good approach, because if you're waiting for the market to crash, it's certainly not going to happen. So that's off the table. There's no chance of that whatsoever. There isn't going to be a housing bubble. People that say they just don't understand housing. There's, like anything else, it's dependent on supply and demand. There's just far too little supply and way too much demand. So the fact that interest rates have gone up into the upper sixes has slowed demand, but even the slower levels of demand are overwhelming the limited amount of supply that's out there. So it's just going to be continued upward pricing pressure. In fact, 33% of all transactions you see multiple offers, but it's continued to accelerate. So when we take a look at 2022, so many people were expecting a crash. No, we got 6% appreciation. I missed the crystal ball just by a hair. We predicted 5.5, but we got 6% appreciation. This year, we're predicting 5.8 in 2023. But what you are seeing is a turning point. From June of 2022 to the end of 2022, we did see modest price declines. Now, like anything else, depends on where you are. But if you talk nationally, about 2.5%. Now, certain areas in Arizona, like Phoenix, they saw a little bit deeper drop in prices, but that's already started to turn. Between January to now, we've already seen prices come back. We probably are about near where those all-time highs were already. So you're going to have a positive amount of appreciation, certainly in 2023. And again, that's just because of the lack of inventory that's available. Inventory comes from builders completing homes. And we have good visibility based on, builders. They can't just blink their eyes and a home appears. When a builder goes to build a development, there's a lot that goes into consideration. Do we have roads? Do we have sewers? Do we have water? Do we have utility? Do we have roads? Do we have schools? There's a lot that has to go into this. And as that is contemplated, in order to get an approval, it may take a few years for that to start to happen. So we know how many homes are going to be built over the next couple of years. And the United States combined, it's about 1.4 million. However, 1.4 million homes, you have to account for about 100,000 homes every year that get replaced because of aging. So that's a net of 1.3 million, but the demand is expected to be somewhere between 1.5 and 1.7. So there's going to be upside pressure on it. And if rates drop further, then you're going to see a lot of upside pressure. So waiting for that is a mistake. Waiting for rates to come down, that might seem like a good strategy, but I could give you a quick example if you like. I could share my screen and show you sure. An interesting reason why that doesn't fly. So let's take a look at a couple of things here. I'm going to just show you. Let's take a look. Now, most of my time is in Florida. I just took a actual case study, and this is actually a good one because it's conservative. It's only assuming that in Palm Beach County, you're looking at about 2% appreciation in the next 6 months and about 3% in the next year. So it's not a lot. So this is an actual case study. Somebody's saying, well, should I wait? Because I could pay 1 point, get 6.5% today to buy $1 million home, or I can wait a year and pay 5.5%, or wait 6 months maybe and get 5.5%, because we all think rates are coming down based upon inflation coming down, and that'll eventually happen. So maybe I'll wait for rates to come down. Wouldn't that make sense? The problem is that over the next 6 months, even with 2% appreciation, you're going to see a big jump in appreciation. And over the next year, once again, it's even more. So that means one of the things you'd have to do is, if you wanted to keep it at 20% down, you'd have to increase your loan amount, which cuts into your savings. So if you took a look and you said, okay, I would save $421 a month if I waited for the lower rate over 6 months, or save $380 a month if I waited for the lower rate over a year. But I'd give up appreciation. I'd give up amortization. So look at the money I'd be losing in this particular case study. In just 6 months, I'd lose $25,000. Now, if I take into consideration that, well, I could refinance when the rates come down. So let's put the cost of refinancing and let's account for that payment difference over 6 months. I'm still ahead of the game by over $19,000. So what you have to understand is that you can take the higher rate today, look at the appreciation you're going to receive and the amortization. It will certainly outweigh the difference. And then you take into consideration the cost to refinance, which is not that much, and you'll wind up way ahead of the game. So in almost all of the scenarios that are out there today, it does not make sense to wait. It's only going to become more difficult because the demand will continue to be there. This is by no means a terrible market, but the contrast from 2020 and 2021 is very stark. So that's what many people try and fantasize about, but that was an anomaly. you're not, let's pray we don't have another pandemic. Rates were that low unnaturally because of Fed buying that brought rates on mortgages down to to 3 or even less than 3%, in the high twos. That isn't a normal situation. So to compare things to that just doesn't make sense. If you take a look at this market and you say, okay, I can bitch and I can complain about it, or I can be proactive. I mean, this is truly an opportunity. Look, there's going to be 4.2 million existing homes purchased this year, 4.2 million of them. There's going to be another 700,000 of them that are going to be done on the new construction front. So that's 4.9 million homes. When you take a look and you subtract out of that cash transaction, so if you're a realtor and you're listening to this, there's 4.9 million transactions. How many do you need? Okay, you don't need all 4.9 million, right? So how many can you do? Okay, if you're saying, look, I'd like to be in the top 10% or 15% of income earners, well, for a real estate agent, if you did probably about 6 or 7 transactions, you're there. So don't worry about the other 4,899,990 units. You just do a few units and you got it. If you're a mortgage professional, now some of those are cash transactions. You still have 3.5 million that are with a mortgage. And then you got 1.3 million people refinancing this year. So there's a lot of refinancing going on. They're almost all cash out debt consolidation, which makes sense. So you don't need that much to get your share. So I think people just love to complain and bitch as opposed to being proactive. Look, if you showed people we just showed on the cost of waiting, that's one thing. Another thing you could do is if you're on the mortgage side, well, you're talking to your customers or you're showing them how you can save by doing a cash out refinance to debt consolidate. That's something that many people are not even thinking about. They can say, oh, well, my client's got a rate in the 3s. So let's say they have 3.5, which a lot of people do have rates in the mid 3s. And they don't want to go to 6.5 or 6 3/4. That's understandable, but they may not be paying 3% when you combine all their debts because their home equity line has now gone to 9. Their credit cards are now 22.5. Their business loans or car loan is at 11%. So they've got a lot of debt that when you combine them is a blended rate that's probably well above 5%, maybe above 6%. So it's not that big of a difference. Now, if you combine that debt, pay it all off, use the equity in your home, because the average amount of equity people can pull cash out on in a home is $185,000 according to Black Knight. The average amount of equity they have total is about $235,000. So, because you can't pull all the equity out. So when you look at, hey, I can take some of that money out, pay off my debts, bring my payment way down, and then if I apply the savings in payment towards my new loan that I'm taking out, you could save 10, 15 years of payments on your mortgage. So it's not the actual interest rate, it's the amount of interest that you're paying. You can pay a higher rate, but if you use that wisely, you're paying so much less than interest. I mean, to be, just to put it in perspective, would you rather pay $1,000 interest on 6%, or would you rather have 3% and pay $5,000 interest? I mean, we all would rather pay the $1,000 interest, right? So people are too focused on the rate and not focused enough on the strategy. Individuals that are reluctant to give up their low interest rate in the 3s to go to something in the 6s. It's also the same thing with debt consolidation. So what a lot of people wind up doing, Jackie, as you know, when they purchase that new home, they sell their home, they take their equity that they have from the sale of their home minus the cost to sell, and then they're going to put the whole thing down on the new home minus the cost to buy. Instead of doing that, which is usually a pretty big chunk, put less money down. Take some of that cash to wipe out all your debts. And what you discover is there's not as much payment shock going from your home with 3 and change percent to the home at 6 and change percent. And we are seeing this more and more and more, depending on the amount of debt people have. And credit cards are at an all-time high right now. So the amount of credit card debt people have is quite significant. So it is very possible, and we've seen a lot of this, that you can go from a 3 and change rate to a 6 and change rate, but by paying off your debts, you actually have a lower monthly payment on the new home, which is also more expensive. So it's just, again, it is all about strategy, which is why it's more important than ever for a real estate agent and a mortgage professional to employ these strategies as a team and to say, hey, we're going to look at your situation right now. I think that for real estate agents, probably one of the bigger issues that you guys are facing is what do you, if I was a real estate agent today, the issues that I'd be facing, I believe, are My client doesn't want to give up their low rate and go to a high rate. I also think that it's difficult today if you're looking at a home because you might have to bid over asking price. So being able to do that evaluation is another one.